Welcome to Maria Alejandra Off Topic, the podcast about the non-musical things around music. My name is Maria Alejandra Jimenez, and I am a violinist, musician, and writer. Off Topic is more than just a podcast. It's a platform featuring articles, essays, and a free newsletter that explores this universe. Subscribe so you don't miss any content and visit the website mariaalejandra.jimenez.com. That's Jimenez with a J and a Z. Subscribe on your favorite audio platform so you don't miss any episode. Our guest today is Pallavi Mahidhara, an Indian-American pianist that has appeared in solo and orchestral concerts around the world and has performed at important festivals like the Stad Menuhin Festival, Marlborough Music and Verbier Festival. Pallavi is also the executive producer, writer, and host of The Conscious Artist, a podcast designed to promote mental health awareness for performing artists. Aside from her private studio, she's regularly invited to give masterclasses and workshops at universities and summer programs. Pallavi holds degrees from the Curtis Institute of Music, the Hochschule für Musik Hans Eisler, and the Escuela Superior de Música Reina Sofía. As the first female Indian pianist to attend these institutions and host a podcast on the mental health in Western classical music, she fervently embraces her role as a cultural ambassador, artist, and mentor. Now, on a more personal note, how do I know Pallavi? I actually discovered her through her podcast, The Conscious Artist. This project in the world of classical music strikes me as very unique. Through her channel, she invites diverse musicians and artists to have open conversations about mental health and other topics that are often considered taboo in our industry, which I especially appreciate coming from someone so well established. Pallavi was a personal inspiration for me to launch my own podcast, and she's one of the references I cite in my blog articles when writing about these same issues. With her empathetic and gentle approach, she consistently invites us to take a moment of calm to truly look after ourselves. And today, in this episode, we are going to dive deep into this very subject. So, welcome, Pallavi. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction.
Thank you. I'm very happy to have you here. Is there something else that you would like to tell us about yourself, or shall we just start directly?
I'm sure many things will come up, but
Yes.
Thank you for saying that I was an inspiration. I appreciate that.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think there are not a lot of active classical musicians doing podcasts, so it was really cool to see you doing it, and yeah, that really inspired me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing I ask all the guests is, do you have a recommendation to share? It could be a movie, a series, a book, a place to visit. It can be anything that you have been enjoying lately.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I would say one of my favorite places to visit in the world is South Africa. It's a place that holds a very special relationship in my heart. My parents lived there for several years, and I got to explore both the country of South Africa and the continent of Africa, many different countries in Africa itself, while they lived there. And it has beauty in its nature and landscapes that is in some ways completely unparalleled to many places on earth, and a beauty in the people that just doesn't leave your heart. It holds a special place. So I know that sometimes there can be a lot of sort of fear around the crime in South Africa. And like I would say, in any country that one travels to, one should be vigilant, smart, and careful. But I have met some of the most wonderful people. I have seen some of the most incredible landscapes, and I have witnessed some of the most incredible magic in my life there. Going on my first safari there, and just experiencing what it means to be like part of this world. Because when you are in a place where you see nature as it's meant to be, and you see the way animals are meant to be, and you see the way, when you can see the entire sky in a 360-degree view, you understand that we're just simply part of this huge universe.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I'm actually from Venezuela, and I think I experienced nature in a very particular way because also my parents, they work a lot with farms. So I also had the experience to go to very to places that were not so still habitated by humans, and it's an incredible experience that I also recommend to everybody. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, what is your first memory associated with music?
I have a few sporadic memories. I don't remember much of my childhood, to be honest. But the most important memory that I have from my childhood related to music was also one of the most formative experiences that I had, and is also what led me to decide to pursue piano in a performing and concertizing way. So I was 10 years old, and I was participating actually as a violinist, because I used to play violin as well, in a summer orchestra program. It was called the Disney's Young Musicians Symphony Orchestra, and it was sponsored and run by Disney at the time. And they used to choose maybe like 80 kids from around the United States, ages 9 to 12, very talented young artists. And we would do a 2-3 week summer camp and rehearse in orchestra and perform. And on the third day of camp, this was in 1998, and this was in Chicago, and the performance was going to be at the Ravinia Festival in Chicago. I was there as a violinist, and on the third day of camp, a boy who was supposed to perform a Mozart piano concerto as a soloist with the orchestra in the final concert, he slipped playing frisbee and broke his wrist. And the director of the orchestra knew that I was a pianist first and foremost, that's my main instrument. And so she asked if I would substitute. And I was absolutely terrified because I was 10 years old, and this was Mozart Piano Concerto number 21. I didn't know it. I hadn't even heard it. And the concert was it was like a week away or something. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing it, and within a couple days had learned and memorized the concerto, and just barely a week later performed it. That was my debut with orchestra at the Ravinia Festival in Chicago. It was, in front of 10,000 people, wow, live on television nationally, and it was just such a huge experience for me. And that was the moment that I realized I wanted to do this for the rest of my life.
Wow, what an experience. It's incredible. I cannot believe it. What a story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
It's also unfortunately started like a lifelong journey of either being called at the last minute or learning things at the last minute. And of course, some of the things are self-inflicted because I didn't, end up preparing ahead of time, or some things, I'm called at the last minute for something. But it's been a good skill to have for sure. It gives me a lot of gray hair, but being able to learn things quickly.
And it's crazy. I didn't know that you also played the violin. That I didn't know.
I did. I played for 8 years. I stopped when I was 14, and I got to high school because it was just a bit too much with piano and school and everything. But I mean, I miss being able to play, and the only thing that my muscles remember is the opening of Mozart G major, like the first minute. So that's all. That's my party trick. I can pull that out. That's all I remember.
That's funny. And I find it also very interesting how these early experiences somehow shapes the other experience that we have later in life. I find very interesting this thing that you say that it happened to you a lot, that you were called last minute, that you had to prepare last minute. And I find that very interesting. Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, or it's just a coincidence.
It could be a coincidence. It could be manifestation. It could be a skill that's come out. I don't know. I'm grateful for it as a skill, because it is definitely not something that is sort of, it's never an easy situation to be able to, first of all, learn quickly and perform under pressure quickly. And I definitely do think it's a skill that can be developed. There is some level of perhaps innate talent that can be a part of it, but I do really think that it's also a skill, just like sight reading or learning, by reading a score, like learning with the score, not just with your instrument. I think these are all skills that can be learned with practice.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, for example, that's a skill that I learned by playing contemporary music, because I started to play a lot of really complex rhythms and patterns and techniques. That improved so much my sight reading, and now I can learn pieces so much faster than before. So it's definitely something that you can learn.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. Yeah.
How did you feel this calling to start reflecting on mental health as a classical pianist?
So it's kind of interesting. I think it sort of developed in a very organic and almost unnoticeable way in the beginning. Even before the podcast came to be, before COVID, I was mindful of how I was teaching my students. I've been teaching for 20 years, or 20 plus years. And I think I've always been sort of intentional about how I teach my students, trying to also pay attention to their emotional well-being, not just did you practice? And I don't know if it was even a conscious decision, but I have chosen not to teach like I was taught. And I will say that I had incredible teachers since I was in high school all the way through till the end of my studies. Some of them were very tough, like Bashkirab. But I wouldn't change anything that I've had in my life for something else. However, just because you've received a certain type of education and it has worked for you, it doesn't mean that you necessarily want to perpetuate that same type of education for the next generation. And I do believe that despite me being able to handle being yelled at or tough love or any of the sort of old school mentalities, just because I can handle that doesn't mean I think that's the healthiest way to move forward. And, it's if I have the chance to do it differently, I would like to take that chance. And so I think that's sort of how it started, that I was intentionally teaching with mindfulness towards my students' well-being, emotional well-being. And then during COVID, I started implementing workshops I was teaching at that time. I was artistic advisor of the Young Artist program at the Reina Sofia School in their summer program. And so I started implementing these workshops, performance anxiety, how to prepare for competitions, and not just how to practice, but how to prepare your emotional and mental and psychological state. Sort of dealing with perfectionism or how success doesn't have one definition. You know, all of these conversations that we didn't really have growing up. I certainly didn't have growing up. And I wanted to help kids understand. I wanted to help this next generation understand that there are more ways to approach high-level artistry than just working to the bone and, you know, having your stress level be at a breaking point every day. So that was sort of the first entry. And then I started developing these workshops that I was doing, and I started pitching them to some different schools and universities. And somebody said to me, why don't you do a podcast? And it's so interesting now thinking back how much imposter syndrome I had, because my first thought was, who would listen to that? Not, oh yeah, I should do that because this is a really needed topic. No, who would listen to that? So that was my first thought. But thankfully I got past that and spent the next 2 weeks sort of just writing out some ideas. And within 2 weeks, I had like 35 episodes worth of content. And I don't script any of my episodes, but I do write. I do have an idea or a topic in mind. And I had all these topics. I had guests I wanted to invite. I realized there were so many conversations to be had. And I said, okay, I think this is really important. I want to do this. And that's sort of how the podcast was born.
Amazing. And yeah, I want to go back a bit because I have to say I really appreciate that you are teaching piano this way, because yeah, I have to say that to a certain extent, of course, this old school way of teaching works for certain people, but for the people that this doesn't work with, this can really prevent a lot of people from actually becoming musicians, people that maybe they could have become amazing musicians. That was almost my case, because me too, I also had very intense teachers growing up when I was a teenager, and already like my reality outside of the violin was quite harsh. For a lot of reasons, and I just couldn't handle it so well. And for a long period of time, this actually prevented me from actually practicing and improving. And it was not until I met a teacher that had an approach like similar to yours, like really taking care of my emotional well-being, that I actually started to progress like a lot and practice way better. And I think it's so important, because I think because of this mentality, we really prevent a lot of people from actually becoming musicians and artists.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it's always, in English, we have this phrase, catch-22, which means you don't really know what could be the better situation until you've gone through it. But by the time you've gone through it, then, you know, it's a certain outcome.
Yeah.
Could it be that I could have had a lot less stress in my life if I had been taught how to manage my emotions better, not suppress them, first of all, but manage them, and then how to deal with stress better, how to balance my daily life, how to listen to my body, how to listen to my emotional state and well-being? Could I have grown more as an artist when I was younger? Maybe. But I also think I needed all of the sort of work that I put in. And I don't know if I would have been as motivated to be disciplined if I was only with teachers that I wasn't slightly afraid of. So I don't know. I mean, again, I wouldn't teach that way. And I don't work with myself that way anymore. But I'm also a very different person now in my 30s than I was in my 20s.
Yeah, of course.
And a lot of that has come through therapy and aging and, you know, life experience. But it's also because of the work that I put in before that I can afford to have that flexibility now. So I really don't know what's the right answer. And I think it's very personal for each case and situation. That being said, I am extremely intentional about how I teach, and it is always a priority for me to make sure that my student is, first of all, feels safe in the class, but also that they feel safe with themselves, that they learn how to trust themselves, that they learn how to practice intelligently so that they're not wasting time, that they learn how to use their muscles in a healthy way. That doesn't mean that I'm a pushover. That doesn't mean that if they don't practice that I don't get frustrated. Of course I do. But I don't think yelling is going to do anything, you know? If somebody isn't interested in what they're doing and they don't have that self-motivation, maybe that's not the path they necessarily want to take, and that's okay too. So then it's more about, okay, if you're not enjoying practicing, let's talk about that. Let's see, why is that? How are you actually working? Is it a matter of how you're working, or is it a matter of the content itself? And are you actually very motivated to do things that you like? So maybe you don't like what you're doing. Let's find something else, you know? So I think everyone has the possibility to thrive when they're given the right circumstances. And I think as a teacher, it's a huge responsibility to nurture that.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point, because, I think that also life is what it is. And I think there are never like the ideal circumstances or the perfect conditions to do things. And for instance, something that I did a lot when I was a teenager was actually writing. And this allowed me to actually nurture another big part of my life, that is writing and reading. And maybe that wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have gone through the experiences that I went through with music and with my life. And I also completely agree with you, because I also teach violin, and it's true that classical music and playing an instrument, it requires a lot of discipline, and it's a career that is very demanding, like emotionally, mentally, and physically. And if there is not a certain amount of discipline and effort, of course, there is not going to be any progress. And it's important to actually help the student to go through that and to develop that. And if somebody doesn't want to go through that, that's perfectly fine. So in this, I totally agree with you.
I think there's also the point that motivation comes from discipline. And most people think it's the other way around. A lot of people think that they will be disciplined if they feel motivated. But motivation only comes after you start seeing results of the thing that you're trying to do. And generally, results are not immediate. You know, whether it's working out or cooking or your instrument or learning a piece, it's very, very, very rare for someone to be a pro at something the very first time they try it. And so if someone really loves music and they want to be able to play this music, they want to be able to express themselves through this music, through their instrument, through their voice, whatever it is, they do also have to understand that there has to be a level of discipline in order to get to the place where they feel motivated to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think that is perhaps harder to teach. Discipline, I think, is harder to teach. It has to be... It's a little bit like change. When someone will only change if it comes from within.
Yes.
You know?
I totally
like
agree.
You can tell someone you should do this, you should do this, but it only truly makes a difference if they feel it from within. And so I think it's the same thing. Discipline is harder to teach, but I think the conditions can be encouraged around finding those moments of motivation, even in the early steps of discipline.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. And how was it for you to create that first season of your podcast? How did you overcome this thought of who is going to listen to this, or how do I start with this? How were those first steps that you took?
Well, the imposter syndrome thankfully didn't stay for too long. I mean, that was my first thought, but then I started writing down things. And, it was also before podcasts were like what they are now. This was in the fall of 2021. And yeah, there were a lot of podcasts, but certainly not. It seemed like something that was for people that had either, voice acting experience or radio experience or, video experience or whatever, something like this. So I really had no idea where to start. I had a couple friends that happened to have their own podcasts. And so I asked them for advice. I asked them, how do I start? What do I do? Like, what do I need to do in order to have a clear quality recording? I happen to already have the microphone that I use because during COVID, I had to do I was asked to do some online performances, and my MacBook is from 2013, so it's very old. And so the microphone is absolutely just not okay. So I bought this external mic. I have a Yeti Nano, which, might be time to upgrade that too, but it's been serving me well, so I think it's okay. And so I happened to have that. So that was already one thing that I had. I talked to a bunch of different friends. I did a huge amount of research on Google. This was before ChatGPT. So I did a ton of research and really read a ton of articles. I listened to a lot of different podcasts. I listened to my favorite people that have podcasts that I feel have successful podcasts. And when I say successful podcasts, I mean I'm interested in what they have to say. I'm interested in what their guests have to say. And I feel like I've learned something at the end of that episode. So for me, there were a few specific artists and podcasters that I really absolutely loved. And so that's how I started doing my research. And I don't know, it was very trial and error. I mean, I recorded all of my episodes before I launched the first season. So I had everything recorded, edited, uploaded, and ready to go before I even launched season 1. And just at the very last minute, I remember it was supposed to come out, I think it was January 2nd or 3rd, 2022. And I think it was maybe an hour before the release time, I realized that I had to, I forget exactly what it was, on Spotify and on Apple, I had to register the podcast or something. It's not like it just would automatically go. I had to do something to actually set it up. And I was like, oh no, it's supposed to come out. It's going to be late. What am I going to do? Managed to do that, whatever. And it was fine. And then it came out and people could hear it and people could download it. And it was great. Now, I mean, I'm much more relaxed about it. I'm in season 8 and I'm recording each week and editing and uploading in the same moment. So you learn.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think this is very useful if somebody listening wants to do a podcast. Because, my process was kind of similar. I spent months just preparing everything, researching which equipment I wanted to use, and also nowadays there are a lot of video podcasts, and I feel like a lot of the advice that you find online when it comes to podcasting, it's for people that are already big creators online, that have already a team of people or the financial resources to rent a studio or all these kind of things. So it took me a long time to actually find the sweet spot in I want to have a really good quality, I want to have amazing guests, but Kinda similar story here, and I also recorded the whole first season before launching it, and recording now the whole second season before launching it. And I guess with time I will be more relaxed and spontaneous. But I think you learn on the go. And I'm actually very curious. What are some podcasts that you like to listen to or that you would recommend?
So at that time, I was listening a lot to Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose. because I was going through a divorce. I was going through intense therapy. I was dealing with a lot of hardships in my life. And I needed guidance. I was at rock bottom in a way. And I mean, therapy helped intensively. I read so many self-help books. But I remember Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose really helped get me through that time. And I really appreciated what an active listener he is as a host. That he always felt very genuinely interested in what his guests were saying and not just sort of like a routine response. I think one of the best podcasts out there, which I recommend to everyone, is A Slight Change of Plans. This is by Dr. Maya Shankar. And Maya, to tie it back to my story that I told in the beginning, Maya and I have known each other since I was 10 because she was the concertmaster of that Disney orchestra that I did when I was 10 as a violinist and then played as a pianist in the concert. She was the concertmaster. So we've known each other since 1998, and she has her own whole story. She was training to be a violinist. She was at Juilliard with Perlman and had an injury that ended up changing her career course, and she went into academics instead, and she's wildly successful. She worked with Obama in the White House, director of behavioral economics at Google, and she has a podcast called A Slight Change of Plans. She was on my first season. She was my season finale guest, and that's still, to this day, one of my favorite episodes that I've recorded. And she is just phenomenal. She's now also been in the documentary Limitless with Chris Hemsworth I think it's on Disney+. And she's the neuroscientist that interviews him and challenges him in the documentary. So she's doing amazing things, and I highly recommend her podcast and her work to everyone. Dr. Maya Shankar, Shankar, and her podcast is A Slight Change of Plans.
So cool. Thank you so much. I will add all the recommendations in the description, so you can always have a look there. And yeah, I wanted to ask as well, I want to talk a bit about some practices and resources and tools that you use to take care of yourself as a musician and also as a human, as a person.
Absolutely. I would say the first thing that I do now that I did not do when I was younger, and it's taken, I would say, until my mid-30s for me to really, truly prioritize and believe this. I would say even closer to late 30s, if I'm being very accurate, that I now prioritize sleeping, eating well, and exercising over practicing my instrument. Because if I don't sleep, if I'm not sleeping properly, I'm not able to function properly. If I'm not eating well, my body is not being nourished with the right nutrients, with the right kind of fuel, protein, fiber, carbs, rainbow of vegetables, fruits, everything that's healthy and good and is going to help give me the right kind of energy, keep my hormones in balance, not give me a sudden glucose spike here or there, whatever. And then if I'm not exercising regularly and intentionally, my back hurts because I'm in my late 30s and that's what happens. So for me to feel good at the piano, which I'm sitting at for many, many hours, and then I'm sitting on planes and trains and in the car and whatever, traveling, I need to exercise regularly and well in order to make sure that I can show up. Because now at this point, I've been playing piano for like 35 years. I don't need 8 hours a day of practicing. But whatever few hours I put in, I want them to be whatever I can give for my maximum that day. Of course, always understanding that my maximum is going to look different every day, and that's okay. But for me, I want to be intentional with my practice. I don't sit down at the piano and then think about, the laundry list of things I need to do tomorrow, or what movie I watched yesterday, or let my mind wander and practice on automatic pilot. I don't do that anymore. I'd rather sit for 20 minutes concentrated and fix that section that I was working on, or, practice that one page, then take a 5-minute break, have a cup of tea, have a walk. If, let's say, there's a myriad of emails and administration stuff that I'm stressed about that I need to do, then, okay, let me prioritize time to do that and to do the other work that I need. But to be intentional with everything that I'm doing, and especially at the instrument, because at this point, bad practice is worse than no practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's true even when you're a student to a certain extent. When I was younger, I practiced, like in high school, I practiced like 8 hours a day. And I don't think I needed to be practicing 8 hours a day, maybe 6, because I had a lot of repertoire and I was young. So I needed that repetition to train my muscles. I'm not talking about muscle memory, but I mean to train my muscles. I did need a certain amount of repetition. But I also think I could have been a lot more efficient if I had been focused. But in high school, I was going to a full-time high school. I had so much piano. That's why I quit violin at that time, because it was too many things.
Yes.
I would practice 8 hours a day, and then I'd do my homework after dinner. I'd go to bed at like 2 a.m. after finishing all my work, and then I'd wake up at 6. I never slept. I was constantly sleepy, tired, falling asleep while practicing. And of course, then things drag out. So I tell students this, if you're falling asleep while practicing, go take a 15-minute power nap.
Yeah.
If you're completely distracted, get up and go for like a 10-minute walk or a 15-minute walk. If your brain is feeling a little fuzzy because you're hungry, have you had water? Have you had like a good nourishing snack? Sometimes those little things can make a huge difference. But like I said, it's all about the intention that we have for the work that we want to do. What are we trying to achieve here? Am I trying to fix something here, or am I just moving my fingers for the sake of it?
Yeah, I think all these things, they're like really basic things, but eventually this is taking care of ourselves. It's like resting good, eating good, and moving our body, and then being present, being intentional about what we do. And I think this doesn't apply only to music. This applies to anything that we want to do. And it's always good to have it as a reminder. And I totally agree. And I think that resting is so important, and taking care of ourselves is so important. And I also learned, because since I do a lot of things besides playing violin, I learned also this way. Like, if I was sleeping my amount of hours that I need to sleep, if I was maybe taking half an hour in a day to put a nap in the middle, if I eat at the time I have to eat, and then when I play the violin, when I take the violin out of the case, and I have a plan, I want to work on this and that and that, like things become so much more efficient, and life is so much more pleasant. I don't know what you think, because also, life is very unpleasant when you are tired and without energy and not focused, and it's really not a nice mental space to be in.
I think a lot of people also are not quite aware of how to be intentional with what they're doing, because it's not something we're really taught. And when I say that I'm intentional about what I'm doing, I'm intentional with every single thing that I do. If I'm spending time with someone, my phone is away. If I'm practicing, I have a goal in mind. And I'm not saying that, okay, I want to learn this page by today, and then I write down, a 6-step list of how I'm going to practice. I'm not saying that. I will very often make a practice schedule, stick it on the piano, and then not follow one thing on it. But having the schedule at least gives me an idea that, okay, I want to do something today with my practice. Either I need to get through all these pieces because I have a concert in 2 days and I need to make sure that I feel good about everything, or I'm learning this piece. I've got a concert in 2 weeks or a month, and I can see that this is taking a little bit of time. For today, instead of getting overwhelmed, let me just say, I want to learn these 2 pages today. And let me work very intentionally and systematically on these 2 pages. It's about also like being logical about things. For example, if you're practicing, and let's say you're playing, maybe there's a piece of music, whatever instrument you're playing, there's a piece of music, there's a scale in it. Let's make this very basic. There's a run, there's a scale. And you play that scale and you're listening, but you're passively listening. So when you play it and you hear that it's not really clean or it's not really the way you'd like it, you know it's not good, but you don't know exactly what's wrong. And if a teacher stopped you right there and asked you what didn't go right this time, you wouldn't necessarily be able to say it. That's called passive listening. That is like the enemy of being intentional, because when you're passive, that's when things happen on autopilot, for example. Mm-hmm. So let's say you take the scale, you're playing it, you don't know exactly what went wrong. So you repeat it again. And you repeat it without knowing what you're trying to change. Maybe the same thing happens. Maybe the 3rd note was a little bit flat last time, or you hit 2 keys, and this time that was clean, but then the 6th note was out. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, it's still not great, but I don't know exactly what. This, for me, is practicing on autopilot. When you repeat something without having a clue of what you're changing. And the way I link it with my students is, there's this quote attributed to Einstein that is, the definition of insanity is repeating something the same way, in the same manner, expecting different results. If you repeat something without changing something, it's not going to change. So that's my rule for myself, and it's what I teach. Don't repeat something without changing something. Maybe it's as simple as slightly releasing the tension in your neck. Maybe it's as simple as slightly dropping your wrist a little bit. This can go for any instrument. Maybe it's exhaling. Maybe it's actually fixing the position of your shoulder because it's super high and you need to drop it. Whatever it is. Maybe it's something very large to change. Maybe it's something very micro and minute to change. But don't repeat something without changing something. Yeah. That's how you can start to train yourself to be present, actively paying attention, and intentional. Those are all the same words, different synonyms of the same thing.
Yeah. And I think this also applies to life in general, no? Like, this applies also to life, saying this also to the people that is listening that are not necessarily musicians. I think we can always try to do things in a different way if there is something that we don't like. And I want to ask you also a bit, in your mental health journey, what were some key things that you did in order to connect with that part of yourself and feel better and take care of your mental health?
My mental health journey, so to say, was very much linked with my personal life and the difficulties that I was going through there. And so I would say that the things that I was doing at that time were very much in relation to how I was trying to heal as a human being. And it really didn't necessarily have to do with my artistic being at the time. What I've noticed is that learning how to take care of myself as a human being has directly affected how I feel as an artist, because I've learned to trust myself as a human being much more. Now I feel that I can trust myself as an artist much more. I am much more intentional as a human being. I'm much more intentional as an artist. I lead my life always as a human being from my values. And I'm always asking myself, what are my values? I check in with myself sometimes consciously, and sometimes it happens through experiences. But sometimes your values are going to change. And certainly as you grow and you enter different stages of your life, what is important to you may shift. And it's important to recognize that and assess that, reassess that. But I have understood that whatever my values are as a human being and how I lead my life as a human being is one and the same with how I am as an artist. Because Pallavi the human, Pallavi the artist are the same person. And I feel much more at peace and grounded and authentically true with myself as both the artist and both the human, because I've taken the time to understand who is Pallavi, what does Pallavi want, what does Pallavi need, what is important to her, what's the kind of person that I want to be, what's the kind of artist that I want to be, and how do I work towards that goal, which, by the way, is going to be a never-ending, always changing goal, because we'll keep evolving and changing as we grow. And it's a flexible goalpost. It's a flexible sort of North Star idea. But I think that's very important, that we learn to know who we are and what is important to us. Because life's too short to be miserable, honestly.
Yes. That's beautiful. Thank you. I think this is something that also, I will say that that's like a big takeaway that people can take from this conversation, to ask themselves what is their values, because I think this realigns everything in our life. So yeah, that's very beautiful. Thank you so much. Is there something else that you would like to share with us before going to the next section of the podcast?
No, I think that's okay for now.
That's okay, great. So thank you so much for sharing all these things. And yeah, before we wrap up, I have a couple of dynamics that I do with the guests, so we get to know them a bit better. And for this season, the first one is a series of questions that are based in the Proust questionnaire. I don't know if you know about it.
No, tell me more.
Yeah, so the Proust questionnaire is a series of questions made by the writer Marcel Proust to get to know people better. And I rewrote them in a more modern way, let's say, because they're a bit old. And I have 24 of them. We are not going to reply to do all of them, but I will ask you to tell me a number from 1 to 24, and then we reply to it.
Number 17.
17, okay. What is a name that you would have liked to have?
Instead of the name I have?
Yeah, or if you are very happy with your name, then it's fine.
I love my name, and I love it on many different levels.
Yes.
When I was a kid growing up in America, it was always difficult for people to pronounce my name because, most people haven't seen the name Pallavi, and it has been butchered in every possible way. But what's really interesting is that it took until therapy for me to finally learn how to have the courage to correct people if they mispronounce it, and to just let them know, actually, it's Pallavi. And it took me just, to put things in context, it took me 2 years to tell my therapist that she was saying my name wrong. So, it took a little bit of time. But I think it's that for me, it's connected not only with what I'm called, but my identity as a person. I also think it's a very beautiful name. My dad chose the name for me. It's a South Indian name, and it has 2 meanings.
Yeah.
The first meaning is the first leaf bud on a tree in spring. And the second meaning is a specific form in South Indian classical music, which is super cool because my parents are not at all musical. So I have no idea where that inspiration came from. And I also remember when I was younger, once somebody told me that I should drop my last name and just go with Pallavi because it's too difficult professionally for everyone to say Pallavi Mahidhara. And I thought, no, I don't want to drop my last name. It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. And, we can pronounce movie stars' names and pop stars and from like Game of Thrones and, Lord of the Rings. Like I'm sure we can learn how to pronounce each other's names. And so to wish for another name, not to be too philosophical here, but to wish for another name would be to wish for a different life or a different identity. And I don't wish that at all.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful. And that's such a beautiful name. I love also the meaning that it has. And I can relate a little bit because I have been thinking a lot also about like my name, Maria Alejandra Jimenez, is quite long, and it's a long time that I've been thinking like, shall I shorten it? Shall I do something about it? And I never feel 100% comfortable about it. So I think I'm also coming to terms that that's what it is. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And shall we do another one? Another question?
Sure. Number 6.
Number 6. Okay. Which activity makes you forget about the world?
Ooh. If I'm alone, I would say cooking. In the kitchen is one of the rare places that I am able to just like completely let go and experiment and improvise. I definitely think I have no improvisation skills at the piano, but I definitely have them in the kitchen because actually cooking with a recipe stresses me out so much. But of course, this has taken, 20 years of learning how to cook where in the beginning I could barely boil water, and now I like to cook without any recipe, and I go by senses. I go by smell and sight and texture and touch and what spices would work well together, which vegetables would work well together, what complements the other. Does it need a little bit of something bright like lemon or tomatoes to lift it up, or does it need something else? So I love that I can experiment in that way, and that makes me feel it's a little bit of a meditation somehow in a way. If it's not about an activity, I would say being with my partner. He is my safe space, and being with him helps to forget everything difficult, for sure.
It's great. I also love cooking, and one of my favorite things in the world is actually to cut vegetables. I find that so meditative somehow.
It's very peaceful for me. Same.
Great. Let's do a last one. So give me another number.
Number 12.
Number 12. Is there an animal that could represent you?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. I don't know. I know some people have like their spirit animal and whatever. I don't know. I think I would overthink that one. So I'm not going to say that I know. But you can you can choose one more question. Do number 1.
Number 1. What would you say is your most consistent personality trait?
I'll give 2.
Okay.
And this is through therapy. I'll give a positive one, which I would say is kindness. I try to lead my life always through kindness. And then the pre-therapy answer would be overthinking, because that for sure is consistent.
Great. Thank you. And last question. Imagine a situation of total disconnection. That would be like the very typical like desert island, but can be also like a retreat. What are the 3 things that are you taking with you? It can be anything. So doesn't have to be things that you can fit on a suitcase or an object. It can be really like anything.
I would say definitely my partner.
Yeah.
I would say lavender oil and a notebook.
Great. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for being here today. I wanted to ask also where people can learn more about you, where they can follow you, and if there is a project or anything that you would like to share.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to be on the other side of the microphone. It's cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. And yeah, people can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your podcast. It's called The Conscious Artist, and the subtitle is Mental Health Conversations with Pallavi Mahidhara. You can find all the information also on my website, pallavimahidhara.com. I have my piano page on Instagram at Pallavi Mahidhara Pianist, and the podcast page at The Conscious Artist Official. And basically, if you go to my website, you can find everything. Or you type in my name on Google, you'll find everything. So everything is quite easily accessible. And I hope your listeners found some things useful today, and I hope they'll come check out The Conscious Artist. It is a safe space for conversations around mental health awareness, and it is as inclusive as a space that it can be. I try my best. So
yeah,
everyone
it
is
really
welcome.
is. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I enjoy particularly also the diversity in the guests. That's really cool.
Thank you. That was part of the, again, intentionality of the podcast, that I wanted to have a whole range of guests, not just classical musicians, not just non-classical musicians, but also other forms of art, writers, actors, dancers, and experts like doctors, scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, people that, the conversations are a combination of artists sharing stories and us learning from experts in the field, in different fields. So again, to be as inclusive as possible. And even if someone doesn't feel ready to share their own story, that they feel reflected in someone else's story at the very least.
Great. So thank you, and also for the listeners, thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Maria Alejandra Off Topic. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and remember that Off Topic is a bigger platform. Find articles, essays, and the newsletter on the website mariaalejandrajimenez.com. And if you want to be part of the brand new private community, El Cafecito Off Topic, you can go to Coffee. And the link is in the description. And there you can also buy me a coffee if you want to support this project more casually. And if you like this episode, share it with your favorite people, subscribe on your audio platform of preference, and leave a rating. That's the best way to support this project. And that's it for today. We will meet again very soon for more off-topic conversations. Bye!